The film begins with soldiers firing at someone, then we go back 36 hours before that day, where we see a young man named Brookman sleeping, and his alarm wakes him up. He gets up, showers, eats, and gets dressed. We later discover that he is at Camp Humphreys in South Korea. Brookman sits down to work on the computer, but his boss enters and keeps calling him. We learn that he has a mission that day and cannot rely on anyone because Garina is not there. He is told to prepare, so he goes to organize his things, gets dressed, and packs his bag. It becomes clear that he is independent in the mission he is about to undertake. He boards the plane with his colleagues, and they arrive at the mission location, which is a forest. Their task is to activate a radar device on the ground, so Brookman and his friend go and try to activate the device while the rest of the team secures the area. Then, they receive orders to abort the mission and return due to bad weather. They board the plane and take off to return before the weather worsens. However, during the flight, severe turbulence occurs due to the weather, and the engines fail. The plane crashes. We then see Brookman waking up after the crash, and his colleague Selby wakes up with him. They exit the destroyed plane, and their colleagues appear one by one, seemingly unharmed. We then shift to the commander, who is injured in his leg and bleeding. Selby bandages his wound to stop the bleeding. The commander calls for the sergeant to request help, so Brookman goes to assist him, but he cannot move. The sergeant asks Brookman to bring the satellite phone from his bag. Brookman goes and retrieves the phone, handing it to the sergeant, who contacts the authorities to report the plane crash and request assistance. He is informed that they cannot help because they are out of bounds and in North Korea. He is told to wait at a specific location where support will come. Brookman tries to contact them again to request help, but they insist on their decision. The sergeant tells Brookman to cut the call because help will not come and instructs him to lead the rest of the team to the evacuation point. However, Brookman refuses to leave the sergeant, so he calls Selby and asks her to help him get the sergeant out of his position. But Selby speaks to Brookman away from the sergeant and tells him that she will take care of him here until the rescue team arrives because he is bleeding and cannot endure movement. Brookman informs her that the support team will not come because they are in North Korea. The team does not know what to do, nor do they know the distance to the evacuation point. The sergeant calls Brookman and asks him to give the gun to his son, telling him that this gun was taken from his grandfather and that the North Koreans are on their way to them now. He does not want this gun to be the last thing he leaves behind. He asks Brookman to tell his son that he loves him very much and informs him that Brookman is now the commander and must lead the team to the evacuation point. The sergeant asks Brookman to give him a grenade, but he must activate the cover because his left hand cannot move. Brookman does as the sergeant asks, then Brookman and the rest of the team move toward the evacuation point, taking the commander with them, whose condition is critical. However, they are unsure of the route. North Korean planes appear to scout the area, and Weaver appears nervous and tries to follow Brookman, who has no experience, but no one in the team listens to him. As they walk, they hear North Korean soldiers approaching, so they hide. However, Weaver decides to surrender and stands up with his hands raised, but before the soldiers reach them, the sergeant detonates the grenade, and the North Korean soldiers flee toward them. The rest of the soldiers get up and argue with Weaver about what he did, telling him that surrender is more logical than death. They inform him that North Korea will return them to their country and negotiate with South Korea. However, they respond that North Korea will torture them, extract information, and then leave them to die. They leave him and walk away, but he follows them. As they walk, a North Korean plane arrives and flies over them, so they hide behind trees to avoid being seen. The plane fails to spot them and flies away. They continue moving and reach a house, unsure of how to proceed. Selby asks Brookman to make the decision because the commander needs help, and they will follow his orders. Brookman decides that they will stay in the barn overnight and move toward the barn in the morning. They find no one there and stay inside. Suddenly, the commander has a seizure, and the owner of the place comes to their noise with a rifle. They do not understand each other's language, but Brookman manages to calm him down and makes him drop the rifle. However, the commander dies. After that, the man runs from the barn toward the house, so the soldiers chase him and capture him. They enter to secure the house and find his wife screaming at them. The soldiers hear a noise coming from beneath them and do not know what it is. They continue shouting at the woman, but she remains hysterical, and no one understands each other's language. They move the bed on the floor and discover a hole in the ground with someone hiding inside. It turns out to be their daughter. The soldiers calm the terrified family and bring the girl out with her parents. The family is in a state of shock and fear. At night, the soldiers sit with the family and seem happy. One of the soldiers gives the girl chocolate, and she thanks them. She goes to play music and dances, feeling happy. She asks Selby to style her hair like hers, so Selby does, and the girl is very happy and hugs her. The soldiers take turns resting throughout the night, and Brookman is the last one standing outside, watching the road. However, he falls asleep and wakes up in the morning to the sound of a car entering the house. He rushes to wake up his colleagues to move. They all move, but Selby goes to get her first aid kit and finds that the soldier's car has arrived at the house. The father and mother take the girl and hide her underground, hiding from the soldiers. The soldiers enter and find the commander's body in the barn. They take the father and mother out of the house and shoot the father, who dies, then the mother. The soldiers discover that Selby is not with them, so they go to search for her. The little girl and Selby are very scared, and the soldier finds their hiding spot. He removes the wooden plank from the ground, but he is immediately shot. It turns out that Brookman and the soldiers have returned to rescue Selby, and they inform her that they are surrounded. They start shooting at the North Korean soldiers and kill them all. A soldier appears and tries to escape to report them via radio, but Brookman catches up to him, and they engage in a struggle. In the end, Brookman is shot. After that, Selby and the girl get into the North Korean soldier's car with the rest of the soldiers, but the car does not start. The girl gets out and shows them how to start it by burning wood. The car starts, and they begin to move. However, as they drive, a North Korean military vehicle approaches from behind. They stop the car, and the soldiers get out and speak to the driver, who is wearing a North Korean uniform and does not respond. However, a North Korean soldier opens the back of the car and sees the soldiers. The soldiers get out and shoot at them, but one soldier escapes into the forest. Brookman leaves Selby going to search for the soldier in the forest. Selby gets out and searches for the soldier near the car. The soldier appears and hits her on the head, causing her to lose consciousness. However, Weaver shoots the soldier, and before the soldier dies, he shoots Weaver. Brookman and the rest of the soldiers come to the sound of gunfire and wake Selby up, but Weaver is dying, and they cannot do anything for him. The team is devastated by his death and continues moving toward the evacuation point. They walk through the forest and reach the location where the troops are supposed to be waiting for them, but they find no one there. Brookman decides to use the device they came to repair and discovers that there is an industrial object moving beneath them from north to south. They begin searching for something metallic in the ground but find nothing. However, the little girl appears and points to something on the ground, and suddenly she falls into it. The rest of the soldiers follow her and discover that this is the tunnel they have been looking for, called the 5th Infiltration Tunnel, which is the path that will take them back home. Brookman tells them that this tunnel passes directly under the demilitarized zones into South Korea. They move and see many boxes around them, not knowing what is inside. At the end of the tunnel, they see light and think they have reached their country, so they call out to the soldiers outside the tunnel. However, it turns out that the soldiers outside are North Korean soldiers, who open fire on them. The soldiers hide behind the boxes. North Korean soldiers enter the tunnel, and the South Korean soldiers escape and kill the North Korean soldiers, but more soldiers arrive, and they are numerous. They run out of ammunition, so Brookman decides to sacrifice himself to give the team time to escape. Brookman is shot and falls to the ground. North Korean soldiers approach him and shoot him again. However, it turns out that the soldiers who shot him are South Korean soldiers who have come to rescue them. Brookman wakes up and finds himself on the plane with the rest of the team and the girl. Selby takes his hand and says, "Let's go home," and he replies, "Let's return home," and the film ends.